For some reason, I've been watching a lot of disaster movies, and there's like a lot you can do there. People talk about this 20-year cycle where there's disaster movies in the 50s and the 70s and the 90s. I also think it's interesting how you can kind of map the monster or the alien or the disaster to like the cultural fear of the time. That's something you could talk about. Something I find really just kind of funny, I guess, watching all these disaster movies is how these movies in the 90s, they're very much like everything's too comfortable. Like, is this my life? Am I just gonna have a comfortable job and decorate my apartment with Pottery Barn and then like move to the suburbs with a wife who loves me? Ew. No, I'm gonna take the red pill. I'm gonna start a fight club. I hope Terminator happens so I can leave my office job and work construction on a non union job site. Then I'll finally be happy, I guess. And then, like 9/11 happened and people stopped thinking like that. The modern version of that movie sounds a lot more like me talking to my therapist. Like, it's just like, I don't want to hurt myself. I don't have a plan. But, like, if something happened, something biblical or ecological, some sort of disaster, that would definitely be my fault, but wouldn't be, like, my choice. I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad at it. I mention all of this just because art is subjective and there are so many ways you could talk about this. For example, I probably showed footage of Melancholia when I was talking about modern movies, and that movie came out in 2011, and it's not even a disaster movie, really. It's about depression. I get to pick what I want to talk about in this whole area, and what I want to talk about is science, obviously, science communication, and how these movies portray scientists, and maybe that's not the best. And, it's just my opinion, man. And that's fine. People can have opinions on movies, it's fine. So, Titanic is a science movie, maybe the best science movie. I feel like people don't remember it being a science movie. The plot of Titanic is this: big, fancy, unsinkable ship sinks. I know, crazy. True story, actually. Also, there's like a love story. You have Rose, who's a teenage aristocrat engaged to like a dingus.
You like lamb, right, sweet pea?
Sausage.
And Jack, who's an American artist, just like a young kid with the world ahead of him, and they meet and fall in love. And this is their love story. The ship sinks, Jack dies. That's the story. That's Titanic. I think people forget, though, that Titanic is a science movie. It's like bookended on a research vessel where scientists are doing science. Titanic is a science movie.
Titanic, 2.5 miles down, 3,821 meters.
Titanic, the movie, was made after the rediscovery of the actual Titanic, like, shipwreck by Dr. Robert Ballard in 1985, and it kind of sparked this reinterest in the Titanic disaster. The rediscovery answered a lot of previously unanswered questions about the actual disaster itself. The technological advancements of the time allowed scientists and researchers to explore the vessel in ways that would have been impossible even 10 years earlier. Like the scene from the movie, this guy, this information given to the audience in 1997 when this movie comes out was new information. This was the latest information on the Titanic. Science movie, actually. The reason I think people might forget that Titanic is a science movie is because it was just super successful. And when things get popular, it becomes cool to hate the thing. And so everyone just kind of remembers it as like cringe. But Titanic is, I would make an argument for one of the best science movies that's ever been made. It's a masterpiece. There are 3 problems with it, though. At least to me, in my opinion. 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 15 seconds. Too long. Once a movie crosses into needs a second VHS, too long. Magnolia, too long. Dances with Wolves, too long. Braveheart, also too long. We don't need movies that long. Again, this is just my opinion. Although, something I love about Titanic, great science movie, is the ship is sinking for a super long time. And I think this is a great decision because it mirrors what would actually happen, what did actually happen when the Titanic sinks. It doesn't just fall, right? There's there's hours of time where stuff is happening and decisions are being made. And I think that's beautiful. But you don't get to this moment until an hour and 38 minutes in.
Fucking me!
An hour and 38 minutes into a movie called Titanic before we hit the iceberg. Way too long. It's too long. And this leads me to my next problem with Titanic. And I get that this is just going to be a me complaint because obviously people really like this movie. I just don't buy the love story. It's not that I don't buy that they're in love, but like two hot teenagers meet the first eligible same age person as them. You mean this woman who's engaged to this asshole who literally fires a gun at her would fall in love with someone else? That's crazy. I mean, it's just like, it's like a Romeo and Juliet style. Like, yeah, this is a camp romance. And if the ship didn't sink, they certainly wouldn't have stayed together. I just don't buy it. I'm not that interested in it. And I certainly don't want to watch 90 minutes of it. It's too long. I would cut this entirely, keep all the science in, and just make Kathy Bates the main character. She plays the unsinkable Molly Brown, a real person who was on the Titanic. Just make a movie about her. I don't need this. Obviously I'm wrong about that though, because people like the romance in this movie. You're allowed. Not me though.
Hey, who thought of the name Titanic? Was it you, Bruce?
When I watch Titanic, I'm watching it like this. Like, fast forward through all these moments, I've got my 1/12 scale diagram of the Titanic, and I'm following Rose and Jack as they run through the ship. I don't need to see this. I was 8 when Titanic came out. I knew that this movie was a big deal because people were always talking about it. And people were always talking about it, because of this song. The song has nothing to do with the movie, right? It's all marketing. Like, you're in the car and you hear the song on the radio, and you're in the department store and you hear the song. 2 full years, just like, na 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 na. It's October 14th, 2001. You're eating some freedom fries. You're walking down a muddy field of Mount Sterling, Kentucky court days. You see some guns for sale. You see some pups, hunting pups for sale, and you hear something, and you turn toward the food truck selling funnel cakes and a pan flute. And it's not even that the song is bad, right? The song is a good song. Celine Dion, amazing vocalist. I love Celine Dion. It's just, it was oversaturated to the point where, like, you first hear it and everyone was like, oh my God, have you seen Titanic? And then you kept hearing it. And now it's like 18 months later and it's like, Oscar, 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 I'm the king of the world. Ba-na-na-na-na-na-na. Have you seen Titanic? And it turns into like, oh my God, have you seen Titanic? What's with Titanic? Everyone just started hating it. They all started hating it because of the song, which is still a good song, and I still like it. So these 3 things, my problems with this movie, they pull you away from the science in the movie, but this is a science movie, and I want to pull you back into the science of the movie. Titanic is one of the best science movies. First, it has my favorite example of my favorite science movie trope, where you have a scientist explaining something to someone who doesn't know the science, but really, he's explaining it to us, the audience.
Okay, and the hull's not designed to deal with that pressure. So what happens? She splits right down to the keel, and the stern falls back level. Then as the bow sinks, it pulls the stern vertical and then finally detaches.
10 out of 10. This horrified elderly woman who survived a tragedy is watching this dingbat excitedly explain what happens to the ship she was on. She remembers. She knows, actually. I love this scene. Titanic also has the perfect example of another trope, and it's not really what's in science movies, but how people talk about science movies. Let me explain. For some reason, this well-written, well-researched masterpiece of a science movie. I mean, James Cameron has done more than 30 dives exploring the Titanic wreckage. He has a team of researchers and nautical engineers and historians who inform him on what they are seeing and what it means. And those same people helped him make these visualizations and make the models of the ship and actually work on the movie to make it as accurate and scientifically probable as possible. The work he did is like a real scientific research on understanding how this ship sank. James Cameron was doing real science research, and in an act of science communication, he just happened to make one of the most watched movies of all time. He just happened to make billions of dollars following his passion for science. And yet, when people watch this movie, this amazingly well-researched film, the only science they want to talk about, for some reason, I don't understand it, is like the buoyancy of cedar doors. Titanic introduces us to the I think a taco is a sandwich. I think Die Hard is a Christmas movie version of boring people who don't know how to have a conversation, where they say, I think Jack could have fit on the door. Isn't that an interesting thing to say? And it's just like all of the science in this movie. You want to talk buoyancy of wooden doors. Why? These people aren't real characters. And also, if he could have fit on the door, he would have gotten on the door. Like, this isn't a science question. He's a human being with a self-preservation instinct. He would have gotten on the door if he could have fit on the door. I mean, like, Mythbusters did this. Why? So much good shit in this movie. Why? Like, if he could have fit on the door, he would have got on the door. I don't understand why anyone ever talks about this. There's so much science in here. And honestly, I think it's because the science is so good, or at least so plausible, that people don't want to talk about it. This is a thing I notice in science communication too. They don't want to talk about the things we understand. They don't want to talk about photons interacting with matter. They don't want to talk about how GPS satellites use relativity. All they want to talk about is string theory. All they want to talk about is quantum gravity, multiverse, like whatever niche stuff that's mostly peddled by bullshit artists, instead of like the things we know. And I'll never understand why. There's so much good science in this movie, and you want to talk about why he didn't get on the door? Like, if he could have gotten on the door, he would have gotten on the door. And you're not interested in like the expertly crafted recreation of time period accurate nautical instruments? You want to talk about the door? Really? Just the door. This is the perfect example of this problem, that Jack could have fit on the door problem. Titanic has taught me that people don't want to talk about the science. They just want to talk about something that makes them feel superior. If I was Jack, I would have just gotten on the door. I just would have avoided the iceberg. I just wouldn't have sank the unsinkable ship. That's what I would have done. And it's a tragedy, honestly, because the movie, so good, so solid. I love Titanic. It's such a good movie. Have you watched Titanic thinking about it being a science movie recently? You can skip most of it, but it's really good. The Jack could have got on the door problem is related to how scientists and science are portrayed in the media. Oh my god, let me come up with a good example. Oh, Titanic. So Titanic is a science movie, and in it, James Cameron has like a self-insert character of like a handsome guy who's real into science. No, wait, he's not into science.
Shit. No diamond.
The self-insert James Cameron character is Bill Paxton. What is his name? Like, Lovett? Hang on. Brock Lovett. Imagine wanting to put yourself in a movie and naming that character Brock Lovett and giving him a big gold earring. Very silly. But the character of Brock Lovett, scientist. He's on a research vessel. He's working with scientists. He is reporting back to the media as if he is a scientist, because he is in the movie, but he is billed as a treasure hunter. Brock Lovett, scientist, is not interested in the recently discovered wreckage of the Titanic. He's not interested in the vessel. He's not interested in the physics of how it sank, or how the different materials have aged over 80 years under the ocean. He's interested in the necklace. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't people who get into science to just become rich and famous, but if those people exist, that's a dumb way to do that. There's not much money in science, actually. But in this movie, where James Cameron himself as a person, is doing Titanic solely because he wants to have a reason to spend all this money and time doing science in the ocean. He just loves the ocean. He loves research. And to fund that, he just makes a movie. In the movie, the character is like, I'm only interested in jewels and diamonds. Like, Bill Paxton's character is basically the 1990s version of the Billy Zane character, only interested in money, and he has to be taught about love or whatever. But the person who made the movie is doing it for the love of the game. They just love science. Like, why not have your scientist character just be super interested in scientists? Like, would people not have watched this movie if you got rid of the whole necklace diamonds element? Do you think so little of human beings, James Cameron, that we wouldn't have watched a movie where the guy just loved the Titanic? I don't understand. Obviously, James Cameron understands because he makes a lot of movies that I am just baffled by that people love. I do think Titanic the movie has contributed to the negative view that people have about scientists. And that might seem like a stretch. You might disagree with me, but you have to remember how big this movie was. The highest grossing movie of 1996 was Independence Day, another disaster movie, another bad portrayal of a scientist who's actually my celebrity lookalike. That movie made about $887 million worldwide. It's a lot of money. Big movie. Titanic comes out in December of the next year, stays in theaters for a full year. Titanic makes $2.2 billion. 887 million versus $2.2 billion. I would argue that Titanic is the movie, especially in the early 2000s, the science movie that most people had seen. The movie where if someone said, think of a famous movie scientist, they would have thought of this guy from Titanic. And in that movie, that guy hates science and is only doing this to get fame and money. And I think that might be bad. However, it was incredibly successful. And of course, the movie studios and filmmakers, they want to recreate this success, right? The plot of Armageddon is this. An asteroid the size of Texas is going to hit Earth. According to NASA, Billy Bob Thornton,
Big Ross, I want you to get on the telephone, wake up 11,000 people. Walt, get them going.
it's too big to deflect with a nuclear bomb. Instead, they're going to have to drill into it and plant a bomb and break it apart. That's the only way to do it. That's the only way to stop it. So, they find the best driller in the world, played by Bruce Willis.
You know how much diesel that clunker boat pumps out in an hour?
And his team goes to space. Spoilers, they save the day. Also, there's a love story. Bruce Willis's daughter, Liv Tyler, she falls in love with the first eligible man of the same age that she meets. It's Ben Affleck, and it's their love story. Am I saying that Armageddon is Michael Bay and Touchstone Studios' response to Titanic? No, of course not. That was Pearl Harbor. And I have to mention this just because it was a very formative moment in my life when I took my little Good Grades coupon into Blockbuster and wasted that ticket on Pearl Harbor. Still to this day, one of the worst movies I have ever seen. You know when you're a kid and you watch a lot of movies and like a lot of it's garbage? When I was 10, I got Pearl Harbor, and it was a very important moment because I was watching it and I realized, like, this is bad. Movies can be bad, and this is a bad movie. And what's worse, I realized while watching, is that this is soulless. There's no art here. No one wanted to make this movie. They're literally just trying to make Titanic. Like, it was the first time I realized that people could make garbage just because they know that it will remind you of a thing that's actually good. And I felt very proud of myself for realizing, like, oh, they just made a super long movie about a disaster that actually happened. And they thought, oh, Titanic was a love story. What if we had a love triangle? Then people will like it. What if we had a theme song by Faith Hill? And I really like Faith Hill. All of her movie songs were so bad. It's not even close to being a Celine Dion song. Pearl Harbor, I realized at age 10, was a scam. And I felt really proud for realizing that. I felt like a grown-up. Like, I have learned a grown-up thing. Sometimes people are scamming you. And I felt like a clever little kid. Like, look at me, I have solved something. And it wasn't until an embarrassing amount of years later when I watched the Lindsay Ellis channel video on the movie Titanic, where she makes the same observation, but tells you that, like, everybody knew this. Obviously, Pearl Harbor is just trying to be Titanic, and it failed spectacularly. And I was like, oh, it is really obvious. How did I not realize movies could be bad until I was 10? That's embarrassing. But anyway, I mention it just because if you want to watch that video, I'll link it below. There's a lot more about Titanic and Pearl Harbor and stuff. So, yeah, I don't think Armageddon is trying to be Titanic. What my conspiracy theory here is that there wasn't enough time to make it Titanic. Like, Titanic comes out November, December of 1997, right? Armageddon comes out 6 months later. They see the success of Titanic, but the film's already shot, the film's already written. The only thing they can do is try to add on stuff to make it more Titanic-like. So the first thing I think they did was they looked at the rough cut of Armageddon and they were like, you know what? People love long movies. Don't cut anything. You know how the ending just slogs on for like a solid hour? Leave it. People love long movies. And I think you can tell because Michael Bay's previous films were not as long. They just kept getting longer. Bad Boys, 1 hour and 58 minutes. The Rock, 2 hours and 16 minutes. Armageddon is 2 hours and 33 minutes. Too long. How long was Titanic? 269 meters. Have you watched Armageddon recently? It's 40 minutes shorter than Titanic, but it feels so much longer. I mean, the end is just like, oh no, half the crew's dead. That's okay. We have spare equipment. Like, we brought 2 crews. It's fine. And then it's like, oh no, the drill bit broke. That's okay. We'll replace the drill bit, but it's the last one. Oh no, the drill broke. What are we gonna do? Oh wait, the other team's back and they have a drill. Oh no, the astronaut has a gun. It just goes on and on and on, and it's so boring. It's too much, too long. You could have cut all of those, maybe all but 2 of them. Just have 2 things. Why? Why is it like that? And the reason, I think, is because they were like, oh, if we make it long, people will compare it to Titanic. And then there's this love story, and I'm gonna say it, I don't think love stories are in Michael Bay's wheelhouse. I feel like he kind of has a problem with women.
The person that finds her gets to name her, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I want to name her Dottie after my wife. She's a vicious, life-sucking bitch from which there is no escape.
And a lot of the love story scenes in this movie feel like reshoots. Like it wasn't a love story movie before. There was this weird thing about gender in the 90s. Good thing we've solved all the gender issues now, where people were like, the crazy thing about Titanic is that it's a girl movie because it's got a love story, but it's also a boy movie because it has a shipwreck. Isn't it crazy that they could make a movie that boys and girls would watch? And the takeaway was, of course, just shove a giant love story and everything and you'll make double money because women will also go see it. And so Michael Bay, unprepared to do this, shoves in, I've got to say, another very boring, unneeded love story into this movie. And it all kind of seems like it was done after. Like the plot will just stop and we have to watch Ben Affleck walk animal crackers across Liv Tyler's body. It's so bad. I don't like it. You could have cut that plot entirely, and I think the original script wouldn't have had it in there, because it was obviously added on after the fact, and it just makes the movie so long. You could just take it out. We don't need it. We don't need it at all. The song. There's evidence for this one, though. If you go to the Wikipedia page for the song, you will find an interview with Dionne Warren, who wrote the song, where she says, oh, I was just trying to make a Celine Dion song, like, you know, Titanic. And this is what she came up with. And unlike Celine Dion, Steven Tyler, not good at singing. This song, the most popular Aerosmith song, apparently, is just him screeching. And it's awful. This is not a good song. I don't understand how this left the studio. He's just screeching. I hear this song and I think 3 things. It's bad. Why do we let Steven Tyler just walk around the world as if he didn't assault a bunch of 14-year-olds sexually in the 70s? Like, apparently you're just allowed to do that and admit it in your autobiography, and everyone just thinks it's cool and chill, and now I have to listen to this. And also, his biological daughter, Liv Tyler, is in the video, and it's not the first time she's like hypersexualized in a video where her father is singing. I don't like that. Ew. And then I think about Mark Chestnut. This is a 90s country music tangent, but there was this thing at the end of the 1990s and the early 2000s where all the country men were making these songs that were kind of indistinguishable from pop boy band country songs. I'm not saying all of these were bad. I'm just saying at this time period, this was the version of like the not really a country song. And country music has had those for decades and decades. I get it. But very specifically, they also started just making covers of pop songs. And Mark Chestnut, I mean, one of the best to ever do it. Mark Chestnut, as a 90s country artist, he's right up there with George Strait.
Brother Jukebox, Sister Wine.
His label was like, cover this song, make a country cover of this shitty Aerosmith song, and he's reticent. He doesn't want to because it's not a good song, and he does it though. They put it on the record and then they release it as the single, and of course it becomes a hit. It gets airplay, but no one buys a record to hear a cover of a pop song.
I could stay awake just to hear.
So it doesn't help the record sell. And then his record company is like, do another pop song. And he says, no, I just kind of want to go back to my roots. I'm a country music artist. And they drop him from his label. Mark Chestnut gets canceled because he is too country for country music. And of course, he's still releasing solid songs, and of course they don't get any airplay because they don't sound like I got my girl in my truck and my jeans in America. And I know people in the comments are gonna talk about how this is what always happens in country music. There are always artists like Kenny Rogers or John Denver that people are say too pop to play country, and I disagree. I have data. There is a marked shift where country music goes from being story songs with good vocals and acoustic music and some goofy, silly shit to mostly goofy, silly shit. And that demarcation, that inflection point is August 20th, 2001, when Toby Keith releases I Want to Talk About Me, one of the worst, laziest, most garbage songs to ever have been written or released by a country music artist. Toby Keith is so lucky 9/11 happened. It's just interesting to me that Michael Bay and Touchstone Pictures choose Armageddon to be the movie that they want to push towards Titanic, because I don't think they understand that Titanic is a science movie. I mean, there's evidence they don't understand Titanic is a science movie, because when they remade Titanic into Pearl Harbor, they took zero element of that. They did not make us care about any of the ships or the planes or the people. They completely lost what made Titanic good. They have no idea. Titanic, a science movie, you know, well researched and dramatized in such a way that you care about the research, you care about learning what's going to happen to the ship, and then you compare it to Armageddon, where there's no science at all. It's almost anti-science. Like, Armageddon, the movie, hates scientists. They hate science, and they think scientists are stupid. So why are they trying to make it like Titanic? It doesn't make any sense. It starts the moment the movie starts. There's this scene, may I suggest, was obviously hastily added to make it seem more like Titanic, the movie that had just come out and was super popular and was doing numbers, where Charlton Heston is narrating the destruction of the planet Earth when all the dinosaurs were wiped out.
Piece of rock just 6 miles wide changed all that.
And it's all wrong. Like, they're saying numbers that don't make sense. They show you an image of the Earth that isn't what the Earth looked like at the time. Like, it's all wrong. It's obvious they didn't ask anybody. They didn't go look in a textbook. It's just right away They've got their heart on their sleeve and they're saying, we don't care about the science. This movie isn't about science. I'm not one of those people who is going to sit next to you on the couch and be like, an asteroid the size of Texas would be a dwarf planet. We would definitely have known about that. Or, it seems like the writers of this movie don't understand momentum conservation, because if you're gonna kick something that big out of its orbit, you would need a huge mass. We also would have known about that. Or like, look at how spiky they've modeled this asteroid as. If it's the size of Texas, it's gonna be spherical. That's how gravity works. Like, I'm not gonna do that. I don't think that's fun. I mean, I understand like maybe the educational value of sitting with a class of students and watching the movie and pausing and talking about the inaccuracies and maybe why they did that and what it would actually look like. But to sit in a movie theater and CinemaSins a movie where NASA in 1999 NASA is able to throw together huge missions with two separate all-terrain vehicles in 16 days, when in the year 2025 there are these astronauts that have been stuck on the ISS for 8 months. Like, of course, they've taken some liberties with the science. Obviously, it's a movie. By the way, if you're watching this in the future, Google that for me. Are they still stuck in space? Or also, like, was YouTube shut off by the DOGE? Are people mad when people like me get on the internet and talk about science? Or what's going on with that? How's the future? My issue with this movie is that it hates scientists. The plot of this movie is like, aren't scientists so fucking dumb? They need a strong everyman to come save the day. They need Bruce Willis to come show these NASA sissy scientists how to be a man, and that's bad.
I mean, you're NASA, for crying out loud. You put a man on the moon. You're geniuses. You're the guys that think his shit up.
For example, there's this scene where the NASA guys have Bruce Willis's patent for some drill he designed, and they are trying to build it.
Said you did a piss poor job of putting it together. First of all, you got the flow system all reversed. Let me guess. You've been tearing up rotors and you can't figure out why. Yeah, that's right.
And Bruce Willis has to walk in and be like, you don't know what you're doing. You sissy boys can't work around a drill bit. How dare you? And like, maybe not in the current administration, but I feel like 1999 NASA definitely could recreate a drill from a patent. I just feel like that is a skill that they could have. They could just do that. But the movie makes it seem like, oh, these dumb scientists are running around. Look at Malfoy's dad. He can't even math his way out of his British accent. It's weird. It's just weird to have a movie where NASA saves the day, but also the plot of the movie is that NASA is full of dumbasses who don't know how to do anything and they need someone to come in and be a man. Like, it's discongruous. It doesn't make sense. It's a confusing watch. But what I do think about this movie that is interesting is that I think Michael Bay's intent was to be like, man, scientists are dumb. But actually, there's some very interesting representation of scientists that I don't think he was aware that he did. For example, Bruce Willis's character is a professional engineer. He is a scientist. He does research. He has patents. He is the best in his field.
He does research calls, and every time the same man is recommended. He's worked on every terrain this planet can offer. Whenever they said it couldn't be drilled, this guy drilled it.
And I talk about this all the time on my videos. This is the type of scientist that I love. Like someone who is in a creative part of the scientific field. They have been doing this job for years and years and years. They're training the next generation. Like they are the world's expert on blank. I love that. I love that guy. And in the movie, that is Bruce Willis. But I don't think Michael Bay thinks of him that way. I think Michael Bay thinks Bruce Willis is like just some dumb brute guy who's like really good at drilling, I guess, because he's a man's man. But like, that's an engineering role. Bruce Willis in the movie is a professional scientist. And the movie makes it seem like NASA is embarrassed to go ask for help. And I think that's crazy. Because actually what would happen is NASA would be like, oh my God, we have to drill into this thing. We should call the best drill scientist there is. And they would get Bruce Willis and they would be excited to work with him. Like this dumb postdoc who can't make the drill bit is not like embarrassed in front of Bruce Willis that he didn't recreate his thing. That man would be excited. That man would be like, oh my God, I've been staring at these blueprints for 3 days. I'm so glad you're here. I have 1 million questions. I'm so excited to talk to you. You can help me solve this problem that's been stuck in my brain. He would be happy. He would be excited. That guy, I mean, it's 1999 for Armageddon, right? So Bruce Willis's character probably wouldn't have email, but that postdoc has probably left 30 voicemails on his little phone being like, hi, Bruce Willis, this is Dr. whatever from Langley, and I've been trying to look at your patent for this drill. I have questions, call me back, you know. Science is collaborative. It's not embarrassing to ask for help. They would be happy to do that. It's wild that this is framed as like, I guess we gotta talk to these losers. I guess we have to ask their advice when they would just be happy to do that. It's wild. So my buddy at work, he's a physicist, and he tests materials that are gonna go into orbit and then come back and have to survive the trip. And one of the things they do is like see when it melts. And I have a video on my channel about this, but measuring temperature is really hard. And if they want to see when something melts, one of the easiest ways to do that is to know exactly how hot your little plasma beam is. And in order to measure that to high precision, what this guy wants to do is take his plasma beam, like a jet, and kind of put a funnel around it. So just a teeny tiny fraction of the beam comes out. And then because it has like a lower volume, it would be easier to measure something like the enthalpy. And then you could get the energy and the temperature of the whole beam. Right. But this is actually a really hard problem because in order to make a little funnel, it has to survive this plasma beam. And it has to have a really high precision, like micrometer size hole, so that only this teeny tiny fraction of the little plasma beam goes out, right? This is kind of a hard problem. And I mean, obviously, they could just ask Elon Musk to see who's manufacturing the Cybertrucks to micron precision. Listen, this is related to the topic of this video, but like this guy, he's just such a dumbass. Like everything he says is so transparently attempting to sound smart, but also obviously not knowing what you're talking about. Like this is just a stupid thing to say. Like why? Why would you need 10 micron accuracy on your Cybertruck? Where did you get that number? How are you measuring? Have you made a model where you have 10 micron accuracy across this whole stupid truck? Do you know what the accuracy on like the joints of a Toyota Corolla is? Like why would you need 10 microns? Like obviously this guy just thinks since he knows the word micron, it's gonna sound smart. But it doesn't. It's every flag in the world that this guy has never manufactured anything. I just feel like I've spent the last 15 years of my life being like, really? Like this guy convinced you he was smart? I mean, if you fell for this at any point in the last 15 years, you need to evaluate your scientific literacy. Like what about this says that this guy knows what he's talking about? Because he doesn't. And it's crazy. And it's still happening. I don't understand. Like, this is embarrassing. This is pathetic. Like, if someone said this in a meeting, people would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why? Why would you want that? Where did you get that number? Who is manufacturing that? But, I mean, that guy probably doesn't have $1 billion. And if you have $1 billion, apparently that's enough to trick people into thinking you're a scientist. Like, I can't. I wish these people would just go to college so they could actually learn things and they would just leave us alone. But anyway, you know, metal is actually kind of easy to get super high precision on. But, you know, if you shoot a plasma beam at it, it's going to melt. So you can't make your little funnel out of metal. It has to be made from ceramic. And ceramics are much, much, much harder to manufacture with such precision, right? And so my buddy called this group at a university they're the people that do this. And he was like, here's my problem. Can you make this? And they were like, can't be done. So he starts getting quotes from other companies, and like they all say it can't be done, but like half the time they're like, did you talk to this group at this university? And he's like, yeah, I went there first. They said it can't be done. And they're like, well, if they say it can't be done, it can't be done. Because the Bruce Willis character in this movie is a person that actually exists in a lot of fields. And I love that person. That's always my favorite thing. Like the person who's the expert, the person's like, oh, well, you gotta talk to Jill. You have to talk to Jill. I love it. And I don't think Michael Bay realizes that he made an anti-science movie about how scientists are stupid, starring a scientist. But maybe he did, and I just didn't get it. Another part of this movie that is written as a failure of NASA, but it actually isn't, and it's actually some really nice science representation, is this amateur astronomer.
I'm onto something big here. I don't know what this is, but it looks like something's burning up there. Go get my phone book, will you? Get my phone book. Get those names of those guys from NASA.
So, like, NASA's so stupid. They didn't even see the meteor shower that's destroying the city. Oh my God. And then this guy, with his own telescope in his backyard, discovers the big asteroid, and he calls NASA and he's like, hey guys, you dum-dums didn't see this big asteroid. And of course they explain it in the movie, you know, like the sky is big. Amateur astronomers are like a real valuable part of the scientific community. Remember, amateur is not like a derogatory word. Amateur just means these people have a real job, and in their spare time, just for fun, they look at stuff in space. They look at the sky. And amateur astronomers have in fact alerted astronomers, professional astronomers, to things they have seen that astronomers have missed, because the sky is big. I have met people with backyard observatories just like this. Like, they're just normal people. They just happen to have a $50,000 telescope and a $1 million mount to accurately track objects across the sky, and then just do it for fun. And it's awesome, and it's important, and I love these people. But in the movie, it's not framed as like, oh, these cool guys who do this for fun help out NASA. It's framed as like, aren't the scientists stupid? This backyard guy could do it, and you guys can't even find the asteroid. And I love to see this guy. I love to see amateur astronomers, but it's just weird. It's painting them as like adversaries when they all work together. They all contribute to the same data set. It's weird. Like, there's so much good stuff in this movie, but it's just framed so negatively. When I watch science movies, like I said, I'm not sitting there nitpicking whether the gravity looked correct when they were walking across the asteroid. Instead, I like to think about, like, someone watching this movie, what is the science, like, fact they would take away? And when you watch Armageddon, I think the thing people learn is that if there was a big asteroid, hitting it with a giant bomb might not be enough to knock it away, so you might have to dig into it. You know, they learn a little bit about inelastic collisions, and I think that that's fine. I think that's a good, solid thing to take away.
General, if you consider your target, her composition, her dimensions, her sheer velocity, you could fire every nuke you've got at her and she'd just smile at you and keep on coming.
Like, it's not a good science movie in the way Titanic is a good science movie, but I don't think all movies have to be. The problem, the whole movie is like scientists are dum-dums. The whole movie is like NASA can't handle it. They need Daddy to come save the day. By the way, Bruce Willis is amazing in this movie. He's so charming. I forgot what a good actor he is, but that's beside the point. The message of the movie is that scientists are stupid. Scientists need help from big, strong men. The feminine NASA can't handle this big asteroid. And there's this big joke.
Yeah, one more thing. None of them want to pay taxes again. Ever.
But, like, NASA is funded by taxes. NASA saves the day. The tax dollars saved the day. Like, is the message that men don't pay taxes? Also, what's with the Greenpeace thing? At the start of the movie, Bruce Willis, an oil driller, you know, contributing to climate change, is like hitting golf balls at the Greenpeace people protesting the destruction of the planet. And we're supposed to laugh with Bruce Willis at like the dumb hippies, right? But then Bruce Willis goes and saves the Earth. Is the message that we don't have to worry about climate change because some big, strong men of the future are going to solve the problem? I don't understand. What was the point? What was the point of this movie? What is the plot? What are the themes? Like, the theme is anti-science, but, like, why? So, like I said, the movie's not good for, like, science communication purposes, but there's definitely some good stuff there. And I can't believe I'm about to defend Michael Bay again, but the jack could have fit on the door of Armageddon is due to Ben Affleck. Like, this is a very famous story.
I asked Michael why it was easier to train oil drillers to become astronauts than it was to train astronauts to become oil drillers, and he told me to shut the fuck up. So that was the end of that talk.
Ben Affleck. Here's the thing. I agree that it would be easier to train astronauts to use drilling equipment than it would be to take a bunch of drillers and train them to be professional astronauts. I agree. However, that's not what happens in the movie. In the movie, they don't train the drillers to be astronauts. They train the drillers not to die in space. They don't go through astronaut training in 16 days. All they learn is how to wear the suit and not die. The drillers are not astronauts. The drillers are like the NPCs on an escort mission that are trying to kill the actual astronauts that are carrying them to the destination. The drillers just put on a suit and go do the drill. They go do the thing they know how to do on Earth. They don't become astronauts. Sorry, Jeff Bezos, but simply going to space does not make you an astronaut. The drillers don't become astronauts. They have a fortnight to solve this problem. The solution is astronauts carry drillers to do the drilling. That's it. It makes perfect sense to me. I think it's fine. I don't think this is a good critique of the movie. If he could have gotten on the door, he would have gotten on the door. If they had 4 years, they would have trained the astronauts to drill, but they didn't. It's explained in the text. Like, it's fine. I think it's fine. So what is the vibe we get about scientists from these movies? You know, from Titanic, we learn that scientists are only after fame and money, and they don't really care about science. From Armageddon, we learn that the people that are funded by our tax dollars at NASA are actually big dum-dums, and some random farmer can solve the problem, and he doesn't take any of our tax dollars. What are we even paying for? And also, sissies at NASA can't even solve the problem anyway, and you need a big, strong, manly man to come help you. Cool. Great. So, the plot of the core is this. Geophysicist Aaron Eckhart learns that the core of the Earth has stopped spinning. The magnetic field is deteriorating, causing these spontaneous, like, pocket events across the Earth. A bunch of scientists travel to the core of the Earth and bomb it until it starts spinning again. So, listen, The Core is not a good movie. The Core is a great movie. I 100% believe someone watched Armageddon. They watched that scene where Billy Bob Thornton was like, going to space is easy. Going 800 miles into a rock is hard. It's full of stuff. And they were like, we should make that movie. Like the opposite of Armageddon. Instead of going to space, you go down into the Earth. And someone was like, yeah, but how? You can't dig into the Earth. Like, the most people have ever gone into Earth is like miles, and you want to go thousands of miles? How are we gonna do that? And he's just like, unobtainium, it's fine. So actually the plot is Dr. Stanley Tucci was working secretly with the government on some super omega weapon, and it went off apparently without anyone noticing, and it somehow stopped the Earth's core from spinning. So Aaron Eckhart figures it out.
What's it about?
It's the end of the world.
He brings Stanley Tucci to Delroy Lindo, who's made this fantastic discovery called unobtainium.
All right, Braz. 20 years in the desert makes you a prophet and a martyr.
Which, when you add pressure to it, it makes it stronger and I think creates electricity or something. And from this, they're going to make a ship, which they call Virgil, which is so cute. And he also has like a laser array that kind of just evaporates things, so they don't have to dig. They like evaporate.
Firing.
I'm officially impressed.
And there are these two astronauts that drive it down because they're like, oh, you can operate a ship in space, you can drive Virgil down to the core of the Earth, and everybody does it and they save the day. And that's the plot. I love this movie because it's like someone read the Save the Cat book on how to write a screenplay and just like, it's like so perfectly exactly what you think is going to happen. Like 6 people ride Virgil to the center of the Earth, but also Virgil, the ship, has like 6 compartments that are detachable. So it's like Chekhov's gun, but instead a ship that keeps breaking. Like you have 6 compartments, you have 6 people. We're obviously just going to watch these people die off one by one as they release. Like it's fantastic. I love this movie. Much like Armageddon, this movie starts off right away completely wrong and kind of just clues you in that like the science is not going to be good in this movie. And I think that's the way to do it. That sets the expectation. In this movie, the astronauts are landing the shuttle and they're like 90 seconds away from landing when NASA is like, "Hey guys, oh my goodness, you're 150 miles off course." And they're like, "What?" And they say it's because the magnetic field is turned off, so the instruments on the ground are not working. And that's just, it's wrong for a million reasons. Like you don't use the Earth's magnetic field to locate the space shuttle, and also there are like 10 different backup systems that would track very specifically where the shuttle is. But also, most importantly, the astronauts have eyes and can see that they're not in the right spot. But it's fine. Like they landed in a river, like a Sully situation, and it's fine. You know right away that it's not going to be good. You can sit back, you can enjoy the movie. You don't have to worry if the science makes sense. You know that it doesn't, and it's fine. What I love about the core is that the core is trying to be Armageddon. The core is not trying to be Titanic. So, how long is the core? It depends on how you define it, but it's about 1,400 meters thick. The movie is 2 hours and 13 minutes long. Shorter than Armageddon. Much shorter than Titanic. Nice. Also, no love story. I love that. You don't need it. The world is ending. You're stuck in a tube that is making electricity from pressure, and you're all gonna die. Do you need to pause and have sex with Hilary Swank? No. And I love that they didn't. I love that they didn't. They're just colleagues trying to solve the problem. It's the end of the world. Are you really worried about getting a girlfriend? I don't understand why there's always a love story in this movie. Don't read into that. Don't diagnose me based on that opinion. Theme song? Nope. Absolutely not. This movie came out in 2003, and I can't believe we all lived through like 5 years of every movie having a theme song. I'm so glad that's not a thing anymore. It was so weird. The core is just a movie. I'm going to say something here. And you're going to have to trust me on this. The thing I like about watching the core is even though the science is garbage, the science makes no sense. Like they talk about, oh no, there's no magnetic field. And so now there are microwave attacks. And it's like, but photons, they don't have charge. You should have Googled that. But what I like about the core is that the movie has a respect for scientists and science that is not depicted in Titanic or Armageddon. Hear me out. I learned researching this movie that the writers really thought that they had like generally a pretty scientifically accurate movie, which is very funny. But there's so much good representation here. Like you have the run-of-the-mill scientist in Aaron Eckhart, who's like just a dude who found a problem and he wants to talk to the government. He wants to try to solve this problem. He's just your everyday college professor physicist. And then you have Stanley Tucci.
Man can come to know the most important thing of all, himself. He can understand. What the fuck am I doing?
Who I think is doing a Carl Sagan impression. He's like the famous scientist that sells books and gives talks and like everyone wants to be him. You have the guy who like leaves academia to work on his like super secret inventions. You have the weapons guy who's like just the guy you see at conferences sometimes, so you're friends. I love all of these different scientists. I feel like are real people who could be scientists. Like, it just runs the gambit of, like, scientists who exist. Like, not every scientist is Carl Sagan, and not every scientist makes tons of money. They're all just people doing the thing. I really like this scene where they're working on this problem, and for plot reasons, Stanley Tucci doesn't want to help, but then he kind of just can't help himself.
I mean, it took me and 400 of the world's smartest people to come up with the first plan.
You want to help?
No. No, look, I have a theory.
He, like, walks over and he's like, do this. And I like that. I feel like if this was the Armageddon movie, we would have found out that, like, oh, this super famous, extra cool scientist is actually a dumbass. But instead, like, they all know what they're doing, and they all have different interests, and they're all working together. And I like it. I like that the government project is called Project Destiny, like a stupid acronym name. I love that. If you're ever writing a government proposal, if we ever have a functioning government that's not run by, like, octogenarians or oligarchs, and we're allowed to write proposals at some point in the future, you should put in an acronym. They love that shit. Scientists, so many stupid acronyms. It's hilarious. I love that they did that. This movie has my actual favorite explain it to someone, but actually we're explaining it to the audience scene, because it has two scientists. So we're in the big government room, and they're like, let's just dig to the center of the earth. And Aaron Eckhart is trying to explain, like, the scale of that problem, and he takes a peach.
The core, the peach pit in the center. That's a tricky one. There's two parts, the inner core and the outer core. You following me? The inner core is, it's a big solid chunk of iron, we think. And that's surrounded by the outer core, and that is liquid.
Yes, but most importantly, this liquid is constantly spinning in one direction. So a trillion tons of hot metal spinning at 1,000 miles an hour.
What I love about that scene, first of all, it's a fantastic demo, but secondly, is Stanley Tucci is already there. So Aaron Eckhart is here. Let me explain his problem. Stanley Tucci, the other scientist, can't help himself. He has to talk over Aaron Eckhart. He has to be like, whoa, let me explain this how I want to explain this. And this is so realistic. Like, if you ask a question and there are two scientists there, one of them will answer, and the other one will be like, that's not really how I would explain it. Let me say the exact same words in the exact same order and act like I'm, like, better than you. I also really like in this movie that the whole time they're like, this plan only works if we actually understand what the core of the earth is like, and we've never been there. We don't know. And they get to the core, and, like, the density is wrong by some percentage, and they knew that that could happen.
The density of the core is different than our estimates. It's lighter than we thought.
So much for best guesses.
I'm fine with this. At this rate, we'll, hit the inner core in a little over 5 hours. I think we finally bought some luck.
Raz?
Yeah.
Could you please punch the new core density into the equations for the nuclear detonation?
That's actually how science works. You know, like, you never know something. You have, like, a range. You have data that represents a wide number of observations, and you don't have an exact answer, right? So we could be wrong. We've never been to the core of the earth. I love that. Like, that is so much better than Armageddon. Just the idea that scientists are aware that they don't have the full answer. Scientists are aware that they can be wrong, and they're not, like, shocked, like, well, they're upset because that means the plan fails, but they just immediately start trying to come up with something that still solves the problem. I just think that's great. I think the representation in this movie of scientist as scientist is so good. I like the movie. The core, I love the core. I love the movie. Although, like, it's not perfect. This movie came out in that really weird time period where people thought the internet was, like, magic. There's this whole subplot where DJ Qualls is, like, a super hacker. It's really embarrassing.
You've got free long distance on that phone. Forever.
Maybe this movie isn't as good as I think. That part, it's very cringy. And just because I'm doing, like, a little thing here, the Jack on the Door part of this movie would be like anytime you watch this movie with a scientist and they're, like, annoyed at how bad the science is, I'll give you the one that kills me. So there's this scene You know, they're taking a ship to the center of the earth. That's a thing that they've done in this movie. In this movie, that's possible. They get in the liquid part, and there are like these geodes, like diamonds, and they break it open, and it's like a pocket, right? So they're in liquid, they break open this pocket, and now they're inside it. It's like they've popped a balloon with the ship, right? And the ship gets stuck on rocks or something. And so these people get out of the ship in the core of the earth. It's 5,000 degrees, and they start digging out the ship, even though they just popped open this thing surrounded by liquid. It should be filling with liquid. Like, what is happening? And in this scene, the captain, spoilers, like a drop of liquid metal falls through his suit and he dies immediately. And then he like sinks into the liquid metal.
Where the hell are we?
Well, the good news is it looks like the suits can take the pressure.
Got lucky. I think we're gonna swim right out of this one.
Bob?
I swear, people watch this movie and they're like, this doesn't make sense. Like, the human body has a different density. It would just float on top. Like, and it's just like, really? That's the line? Like, they're in the core. They're standing just vibes in a 5,000 degree open pocket surrounded by liquid that's not flowing in. And you're like, why is this body, this corpse, sinking? Terrible science. Ew, it's wild. It's like, just enjoy the ride. The science is bad. It doesn't matter. It's fine. And honestly, just like Armageddon, like if you're going to watch this movie and take away one piece of science information, the thing you're going to take away is that the Earth looks like a peach, and I think that's fine. I think that's a pretty solid order of magnitude estimate of what the Earth is like. You got a thin crust and the core is bigger. I think that's solid. I think it's fine. I like the core. It's fine. But this movie flopped. It failed hard. People do not like this movie. And like, maybe it's because it's 2003. Maybe people are over disaster movies at this time. Maybe it's because I'm overstating how good it was. I mean, I really liked it. But scientists really hated the core in a way they didn't hate Armageddon. And they blame the bad science. And I find that interesting. Because the science in Armageddon is equally bad. But like, yeah, they go to the core. That would never happen. That's bad science. But in Armageddon, Ben Affleck is driving like a four-wheeler across an asteroid. Like, the Russian guy is... it's nonsense. Armageddon is just as bad at science as the core. And yet the core failed. And the scientists are like, see, it's because it had bad science. Armageddon was a hit. I don't understand this argument. The good science movie I have learned is a movie called Deep Impact. Apparently, it came out 2 months before Armageddon, and it's the exact same plotline. It looks like it's got Tia Leone, Robert Duvall, Morgan Freeman, Zephyr Cochrane, looks like, and young Elijah Wood. I have not seen this, but the scientists all agree, on the internet, of course, from the late 1990s, that this movie is the superior movie. This movie is more scientifically accurate than Armageddon. Here's the thing, though. Armageddon obviously won. I've never heard of Deep Impact. Like, you can say the science is better. That's totally fine. Armageddon is the more popular movie. People preferred it, even though the science is worse. And now you're going to tell me that the core failed because it has bad science? I don't think so. Armageddon has bad science. It was very popular. But this movie, the core, pissed off scientists so much that 6 years later, scientists and filmmakers banded together with like the actual National Foundation of Science to create a little committee that was like, we're dedicated to making sure movies are more scientifically accurate. And it's just like, these are movies, folks. Like, movies, I don't know what to tell you. If someone watches The Core and thinks unobtainium is real, that's not a movie issue. That's a science education policy issue. No one watches Armageddon and thinks they could drill an asteroid. Like, that has what? I don't think this is a science has to be more accurate in movies issue, but this group with people like Dustin Hoffman and Steven Pinker and Lawrence Krauss.
Brother, this guy stinks!
What a team. They got together, started advising, super scientifically accurate movies like Thor, Marvel's Thor, where the alien does magic and travels through a wormhole, Again, nothing wrong with Thor. I don't care if the science is accurate when I watch a superhero movie. I'm just confused why they think Thor is super scientifically accurate, but Armageddon isn't. And also, why do they want Thor to be scientifically accurate? Like, do you think people go to the movies and watch Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania with the intent of learning quantum mechanics? Do you think Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania teaches quantum mechanics? Because I don't have that expectation. That's not a thing. Marvel movies are not grounded in scientific accuracy, and they don't have to be, because, folks, these are movies. They're not college courses. No, I don't think it's the case that the core failed because people were upset that the science wasn't accurate. I think the core failed because scientists solved the problem. There's no everyman Bruce Willis, who again I maintain is a scientist, even if Michael Bay doesn't realize that, to come save the day and be a big manly man. In the core, the scientists are the manly men. The scientists work together. The scientists get in fist fights and they come up with a new solution and they sacrifice their lives, and the scientists create and then also solve the problem. The scientists are aware of what's happening the whole time. The scientists don't need some everyday Joe to come in and be like, have you thought of this? And I don't think people like that. I think at the time when the core came out, the public viewer liked and expected in a science movie the scientist needs to be a dumbass and some everyday character has to save the day. At this time, they expect scientists in movies to be dum-dums. They expect scientists to not be interested in science and only in like wealth and fame. And they expect scientists to not be man enough to solve the problem. In the core, that doesn't happen. In the core, the scientists solve the problem. And that movie is the one that failed. The people want a movie where the everyman proves the scientists wrong. And hear me out. If your primary portrayal of scientists is that they're dum-dums, or they're evil money hoarders, or they're sissies that can't handle solving problems, you might have a negative impact on how like the public views science and scientists. I mean, maybe 20 years into the future, you might run into some issues. God, I don't know. Let me just pick one. Raw milk. People are drinking raw milk.
Got raw milk?
I guess it tastes sweeter.
I
Those
guess.
who drink it, that's what they say.
It stands to make all of us sick, and potentially sick in ways that we haven't really seen in American public life.
In reality, raw dairy actually has active and bioavailable enzymes.
And about the purported health benefits?
That they're not scientifically accurate.
So we love it. Do we love it? Yeah.
People are just like, I'm smarter than the scientist. Everyone's so sick now. Raw milk is better. I'm gonna drink raw milk. And it's just like, why do you think raw milk isn't available? Do you know why people don't usually drink raw milk? And I mean, they could just look for this information. I'll give you a hint. It's because people die when they drink raw milk. Not all the time, but there's that risk. You see, there are pathogens in milk that can get you sick. If the cow has the flu and you drink the raw milk, you can also get the flu. Also, you could get a different kind of flu, like a bird flu, and then you could give everyone bird flu and you could start a fucking pandemic. You take the raw milk and you heat it, and it kills the pathogens, and then you put it in the fridge where the pathogens or like bacteria cannot regrow inside the milk as long as you follow safe food practices. You're not supposed to drink out of the jug of milk, and then it's safe to drink for like much longer, okay? Pasteurization is literally just heating up the milk. And yet, I bet if you ask people who drink raw milk what pasteurization is, I don't think they know, because they don't trust scientists, because they grew up thinking it was important to feel superior to scientists, even though it just doesn't make sense. Like, you can just seek out this information. And I do think how we portray science and scientists in the media contributes to that. Everyone grew up learning that scientists are dum-dums and you need a big, strong man to solve the problem. And now you got people drinking raw milk. 150 years ago, someone developed this technique of just heating milk so that it's safe to store and safe to drink. And instead, people make the choice to drive to some random ass farm and spend 4 times as much on raw milk, even though it's a risk to their family. They do that instead and bring it home so that they can feel superior and they can be like, dumb scientists think you can't drink raw milk. And then when you tell them, like, no, actually, people could die. Like, you put that in your toddler's cereal, he could get the flu and be hospitalized for weeks. Or you could just buy normal milk at the store. And when you tell them this, they just start making stuff up. Like, no, actually, raw milk is better. Actually, protein absorption, and it's just all horseshit. It's just all lies. I'm just shocked people would risk injuring their children rather than being like, wait, why don't we drink raw milk? And then learning something and then making the intelligent choice to protect your family. This is a media problem. So there's that. I don't know, does it seem like a stretch to blame the 90s presentation of scientists as being big dum-dums to 20 years later? All this, don't drink raw milk because I don't want you to die. So things are bad. It's like wild out there. Have you noticed that TikTok got banned and then unbanned, but then like people started censoring what's available on social media? What if Google did that? It would be great to have a second location owned by creators and not billionaires. What if I'm joining Nebula? I'm on Nebula right now, I think. Right now when this video is live, you can go find me on Nebula. Nebula, if you haven't heard of it, is a streaming platform. And I mean, honestly, you've probably heard of it if you watch YouTube videos. That Titanic video from Lindsay Ellis's channel that I mentioned earlier, it's on there. In fact, I'm going to link the Nebula link, not the YouTube link. And it's not just video essay stuff. There's a lot of science and tech and like engineering stuff. Up and Atom is on there. Practical Engineering is on there. Nile Red is on there. I'm drinking out of his coffee mug merch right now. There's a lot of good stuff over there. And also now me. I'm on Nebula. This is an ad from me on Nebula, a second location. If you would like to support my channel on Nebula, you can click the link below and get a deal on your sign up and find me there. It's me on Nebula, on a second location. You guys, I kind of wanted to watch Deep Impact for this video. I love Tia Leone. She's great. And it's like 2 hours long. Like, why are movies so long? I love a nice 90-minute movie. I mean, what is even the plot? I'm gonna have to watch Deep Impact. All right.